Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Patreon exclusive content. This is episode one of the Patreon exclusive content. So it's paired with episode zero of the podcast. So thematically, we're going to be talking about a brief introduction, beginnings, the start of things, inception, conception, nascent, whatever, developing. But we're also just going to show you what the format of the Patreon exclusive content is, which is free form, no script, no editing, aside from maybe mastering and just video color corrections and stuff like that. And it's just a conversation between myself, your host, Timothy Jew, and your co-host, Servando Casillas.
Servando Casillas.
Yes, sorry if I stole that from you.
You're good. I didn't know if you're going to let me say it or if you wanted to say it.
Yeah, that was my bad. I just like talking too much.
No, you're good.
So we're gonna start off with a brief introduction of each other. And the introduction doesn't have to be anything. It's just whatever we want to say. So let's see how narcissistic we are. My name's Tim. I am the founder of this podcast and the startup and whatever is associated with this. And in general, I guess people would just call me a really big nerd, even though I'm a small person. So that's, yeah, you agree with that. And as far as just introductions go, I guess I'm an avid learner. I just like learning and like distributing like information and ideas with people. I'm a debater on the personality quiz thing. You know what I'm talking about? And so I like debating and being the devil's advocate. Anyway, Servando, take it away, my friend.
Okay. Yeah. My name's Servando. Um, yeah, I'm co-host. We've known each other for how many years now? We in
Jeez, don't
2023.
do that.
What? It's
Dude,
been
it's gonna make me feel old.
2019.
2019 to 2023, 4 years, dude.
4 years, dude. Like almost on the dot. Because I feel like we
Wow,
probably met around January.
that's insane.
Yeah. I live pretty small town. That's why we're kind of having to do this weird Zoom format instead of actually getting together.
Yeah,
I live in Colorado though, born and raised here. Um, yeah, to me, I'm like a student. I feel like I constantly have to be um doing something with school, or else I feel like
mm,
I am bored.
dude, yes.
But I am not. I feel like I'm not as good of a learner as you are. I struggle with material a lot, but I like it. I enjoy it. Um, yeah, to me,
Dude, well, that's
I'm
basically
shy.
just Servando and I
I'm
completely
awkward.
reduced to that one sentence. We are unidimensional. There's nothing else to us. It's just student
I
for
thought,
Servando and learner for me.
I
So
thought you were gonna say you're a unit.
we are units.
I was
Oh
like,
man. Okay. Well, so just to share the format of this podcast or the Patreon exclusive content, there is going to be one episode per podcast episode, and we're gonna go off the general themes that are touched upon with each episode, and only the first Patreon exclusive episode per season will be uploaded to all our platforms. The other five will be on our Patreon exclusive content. So you can't get the rest without, paying some money, some moolah. But hey, and by the way, 10% of the proceeds go to Children's Hospital. So remember, you get to hear us and you get to be altruistic. You get like no aftertaste of guilt or shame or anything like that. Anyway, for the most part, we just talk about whatever we want, and then at the end, we'll start going off of like the themes of beginnings because we don't want to be too heavy-handed, and we don't want to. I don't know. I don't know if you agree with me on this, bro, but like the last thing I want is for this Patreon exclusive content to be analogous to like those life coaches. You know, those guys like what's his name, Jerry, whatever, or he's like
Jerry.
Jerry or Gary. He's like he has like your voice, but like two octaves lower, and he's like, I woke up by 4 in the morning, and
Or
I
okay,
sleep
okay,
at 3 in the morning, and
like somebody like David Goggins. Do you know
yeah.
that guy?
Well, okay, David's pretty cool though.
That guy says, "Stay hard." That's his quote. That's his quote. That's what he says.
No, I agree. So you and I were talking about this before when we were trying to record this content, but I just said that like if you look at the demographic of people who are life coaches, it's like overwhelmingly white men. And I feel like there's a reason for that. I know I don't want to bar into like controversial topic like conversations, but go for it, bro. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Oh no, it just sounded like you're being controversial. No, I was just gonna say we are no people to be giving advice.
Dude, that's what I'm saying.
Not
It's
because
like
we're not white men, just because we have not experienced enough,
I guess
in my
that
opinion. I
too.
don't know.
But I
Well,
think
also I haven't succeeded, in my opinion.
this is my thing, okay? Like the mentors that I respect are people that always constantly say they don't know. And they constantly like express empathy. Like, for instance, someone that I greatly admire is Professor Luger. Like through and through. Dr. Luger is an amazing individual and from my perspective of her. And she never says like, oh yeah, life is like this, life is like that, life is like she's just like, I don't know. But like I feel you when you're having emotions, like I think that's like true mastery. Whereas when you have people who are like coming up to you and saying like, I succeeded and it's because I worked
Oh,
every day and therefore this is what you need to do to succeed. It's like you really don't really take into account like all the confounding variables that lead to success. And Chris, he was our guest for the second episode, which we'll go over, but he said that he was in like a class for a group like interview, and they basically like the questionnaire was like, how much of the environment plays to your success? Like list a percentage of your like your internal locus of control versus external locus of control, and everyone put it down like 20% environment,
oh.
80% themselves. And Chris put it like at 40%. And I was like, yeah, I think like 40 to 50% makes sense. Like,
Yeah, I would personally definitely put more than 20. It's like that's why you have those super rare instances of people that come from very difficult living situations and become extremely successful. That's why there's so few of them because
yeah,
and you look at the people who are kind of built up to have success and but I think statistically it shows that it really helps to be in a certain situation and know certain people
I know. Like, we were
like a lot.
talking, like, the median household income for a family of three going into medical school, like the medical students, is 100K for a household of three. That's like super rich. Like,
Yeah, that's good money. I think the average income in the United States in general is like 50,000, 55, something like that. Um, when you say a family of three, you mean
mom, dad,
like two parents and the kid.
yeah.
Okay.
Conventionally, obviously, there could
Yeah.
be variations. Why do you look scared? But like this is
Comment.
this is my thing, okay? Like I just feel like if you live in America, first of all, the probability of you being justified in saying you're self-made has just depreciated to like near zero to me. Like if you're just born in America, you're already so ahead of a lot of people.
I see what you're saying.
But even if like you are David Goggins, like let's say you are someone that really did overcome all the obstacles and you did become like self-made, quote unquote. It's always better to err on the side of saying you weren't self-made. Like you're just grateful for the opportunities that have been afforded you and like you know what I mean? Like it looks bad like for instance, if you're like a super talented dude, but you're like, ah, no, I'm not that talented, that looks way better than being like, yeah, I am super talented. And you're like, yeah, yeah, you can say that, but you're a jerk for saying it. I just want you to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if you don't watch sports, do you?
I watch sports, but
I
I'm
have
not in the zeitgeist as much as I'd like to be.
I didn't know. Do you know Leo? I mean, all right, I'm gonna ask this question. Don't laugh at me. Do you know Lionel Messi?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay. All right, just making sure.
Yeah.
That guy is they say that guy is like literally one of one that nobody has ever been better than him, and
Mm,
probably nobody will ever be better than him. But the guy, I don't know if humble's the right word because I feel like humble's somebody who like openly is like, yeah, I'm okay.
yeah.
He's just like he puts in the work. I don't know how to explain it. He's not arrogant. He he could like be in everybody's face and be like, yeah, I'm that guy. What are you gonna do?
I am a unit.
He is a unit. And yeah, I agree with you. It's pretty neat that he can be that great at what he does, and he's just like me.
I think there's a difference between like feigning humility and being like confident because I think true confidence is humble.
I think that's what he is. I think he knows, obviously he knows he's good.
Yeah, he's like, "What? I'm
But
the
at
number
the
one
same
soccer player."
time, he knows he doesn't have to like say or
He lets his
do or
action speaks for
exactly.
yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
my actually it's one of the rules. I don't know if I'd call it a rule, but my mom has always told me since I was little, she's like, basically don't brag about yourself.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be have some sort of good quality, kind of just do it, be good at it. And if you're that good, people will notice and people will say it for you. And if
Yeah.
they don't say it, oh well, you don't need to be going around
I,
being like, oh, I'm this or that.
I also think it's just sort of like when you have people like Dr. Luger or any of the doctors that we know or professors
Yeah.
or mentors, like oftentimes, dude, the reason why they say, oh, I don't know that much is not because they're trying to feign humility, but it's because they know so much. They know like all the unopened doors that are still out there. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, whenever like let's say like I play music, right?
Mhm.
And people say, "Oh, you're great or good or whatever." And I always say like I'm actually pretty mediocre, and that's like an objective statement because when you are doing as much research as some people can in like how amazing some of these musicians are um Justin Schultz and Jacob Collier and even like even like John Mayer and stuff like that.
I
There's
thought you were
just
gonna
so
say
many
Justin
levels.
Bieber.
And Justin Bieber, dude, Yummy sucks. I hate that song. I like
Okay.
objectively, it has a zero point 0.0 rating for me. But anyway, all I'm saying is like when you do all of that research, and I would try to avoid hitting the mic because it's sort of like
I
blowing
don't
out
I
the
did I hit
you're
it?
hitting the
Oh,
desk.
I hit the
Yeah,
desk, my
yeah, yeah,
bad.
yeah. But anyway, you just know, like for instance, Servando, you're probably good at soccer. But if I
True.
said, "Oh, Servando, you're so amazing at soccer. You're probably like one of the best," you'd be like, "There's no way." Right?
Yeah,
Like
I would laugh.
you know Messi, right? Like you know Ronaldo.
There's a whole
Like
league of professional players.
yeah, exactly. So you know since you're so in there, you know objectively like, ah, I'm okay for my level, but
I do all right.
yeah, like I can hold my own in a game against
Yeah,
middle-aged men or something like
and I knew when you were talking about Professor Luger saying that she's kind of like not this is how life is. This is this. It's she's more like I don't know. It's kind of we don't know me, kind of laid back. I knew
yeah.
exactly what you meant. I was like, yeah, it's because she's seen so much and she knows that there's so much that she hasn't seen.
Bro.
Um, and I get it. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude. I just feel like when people say like you you're a loser because you're a loser, it's like that's a very closed-minded perspective of seeing things. Like for instance, I think I read a recent I think I was told by a doctor that I work with that they're saying that 90% of people who are told to like, work on diet and exercise to lose weight
Mhm.
do not end up losing weight. Like only like 10% of people, and I could be completely misinterpreting the numbers or misreporting the numbers, but regardless, the general story is still there. You don't have to extrapolate that much. Essentially, what they're saying is what we're realizing is obesity is largely an environmental and in genetic factor. It's like something that you really will have a difficult time overcoming. And then there's like metabolic based surgeries or operations like the gastric bypass surgery. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it. I don't know exactly what it is that they do. Don't they literally just make your
Stomach
like
smaller and
stomach
stuff like that.
smaller?
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
people lose weight on that for the most part. But like you ask them to work out and like exercise and stuff, and it's like, how unfortunate are those people?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that goes exactly back to that first question about the environment.
Yeah.
How much of your environment plays in like your success, and a lot of people who never mind, I shouldn't say a lot of people because I have no idea. I don't have any research based off this,
Right.
but um I feel that people who like become extremely obese, they don't have a lot of time, they don't have great paying jobs, and it just it's like one thing stacked on top of another, and that's what makes it so difficult for some of these people to really lose weight permanently. They live their living situation is just it's so hard. It's not just eat well and diet. It's they live a life where it's almost impossible for them to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym for a few hours today, and I'm gonna go eat buy these foods just simply because they might not even have the access to it and the time, the income. Yeah, that's
Dude, well, I totally agree with you. Like everything compounds on itself. Like it's harder to work out when you're heavier,
yeah, it's
right?
just
And you're probably more likely to have like other comorbidities like anxiety and like knee damage and stuff like that. And first of all, I would like to preface by stating that Servano and I are not authorities on any of the topics that are going to be
yeah,
spoken upon. But
I know nothing.
I think like we're both in the zeitgeist. We're sort of, and I don't know why I've used zeitgeist twice in this conversation. That's a very rare word to use, but we're both sort of in there with medicine, peripherally on the outskirts, right? Where we see it from the various positions that we've held. And for me as a medical assistant, when I interact with patients, initially, and I want to sort of be vulnerable here. Bro, every single time I saw a patient come in with the comorbidity of anxiety, my heart just sank because I think there was, because of the repetition of work, you don't view patients as like people anymore. You view them as like just like something to get through before the end of the day. At least I started seeing myself go through that because every time a patient came in with the comorbidity of anxiety, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's just going to be so much more difficult than it needs to be. Like, I'm just getting your blood pressure, chill out. Like, it might be elevated in office, whatever. And then as I started looking into it, I was like, these are like the way that I view patients and people in general now, if I'm like level headed, is like children. Like these were children that suffered some sort of trauma, wasn't able to cope with it, and life just slowly chipped away and started sanding them down, and now they're adults and they're dealing with all of the pain that they had to suffer throughout their whole life. I should be more empathetic and understanding. Like when patients come in and they're like, yeah, I know I was supposed to quit smoking last time. I just couldn't. I think the natural reaction is like in your mind, you could be like, oh, dude, just quit. Like, just quit. But I have caffeine withdrawals when I don't drink coffee for some time. I don't know how difficult it'd be, especially if you're coping with some mental aspect. You know what I mean? That you're trying to wash away with nicotine. I mean, how do you feel about that, dude? Like just the
You know,
judging aspect and environment and stuff.
so yeah, I work at the lab in the hospital, and I go and I draw blood from patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, I draw a lot of patients, and yeah, there's when it's like busy, and I'm just like literally, I have a bunch of patients that I like need to get their blood. I do catch myself, and I'm like, I feel bad because I'm just like going through the motions, and I'm like trying to get just. Why are you laughing?
I don't know, man. When I look at your face sometimes, I can't keep serious. You laugh at my face too when I'm talking sometimes. Anyway, yeah,
That's
as you
because
were
you're funny
saying.
looking.
Dang. As you
Um,
were saying.
yeah, no, I do catch myself when I'm like getting busy because
Yeah.
I'll get the one patient that's like extra like upset that I'm there, and I get it. I ironically, dude, I hate getting poked by needles. I get it,
Mm,
and like I tell the patients that I get it, but I don't think they think that I mean it. They're probably like, yeah, yeah, whatever. You're just gonna poke me anyways, and I'm like, I mean, I have to, but I do feel bad, and
mm.
in those moments, I do catch myself, and I'm like, these are people. I mean, obviously, I know they're people, and recently, I had seen my grandma sick back in around Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
And if I'm being completely honest, I see a lot of patients that look how she looked. And when I
Mm.
came back, ever since then, I was kind of selfish, but I view them kind of differently. I'm like, when I was with my grandma, I like believed everything that she told me.
Mm.
And I'm like, if she told me she was in pain, I was like, oh man, my grandma's in pain.
Yeah.
And before, when you see so many patients, I don't know if you feel the same way or if you see the same thing, but like you see so many patients that are in pain, and you're kind of like, not that you don't believe them,
Mm.
but you're kind of like, well, so is everybody else that's here.
Yeah.
Not the workers, obviously. I mean the patients. But after I spent a little bit of time with my grandma. I kind of came back and I more empathetic, and I kind of like see my grandma and them now, and
Yeah.
I know it's selfish and I feel so bad. But yeah, you just get caught in the motions, I think. And for me, like these couple of things just kind of brought me back. And I'm like, oh man, these people just like, I mean, obviously they're people. I'm like, they're people.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just keep saying the same thing. And then,
No, but it's
do you get
important.
what I'm saying?
No, dude,
Like,
I
I'm not
100%
saying I
understand.
don't think they're people or do I ever forget that they're people. It's just, you see so much of the same thing. And thankfully, a lot of people get better. They go to the hospital and they're there for a little bit and they get better and they go home.
Yeah.
And so you see the next person with the same thing. And I think subconsciously you're like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get patients who are really sick and, it just doesn't go the same. And in those moments, you're like, oh man, I need to slow down and just kind of be more empathetic, be nicer.
Dude, I first of all, I completely understand you. And it's not like I think there's just like a layer of abstraction that occurs when it's a job. Like,
Yeah.
even like surgeons will view like patients as like slabs of meat when they're doing operations. Like you sort of just dissociate the person from the patient. And I know earlier, you actually today, sort of crazy, but during clinic before I went to research, and dude, I have two stories today.
Mm.
The research is completely regardless of this topic, but this patient was being a jerk. Like, and I'm normally I am like I can overcome that jerkness, whatever it may be, because I just like I have like a very bubbly personality at work, like super bubbly. And like most of the time, all of my patients will laugh. And occasionally there are patients that just you can't get them to laugh, but I sort of concede that because it's not a fun place to be at the hospital for a lot of people. And so I'm like, whatever. But there's certain people that are just like intentionally just rude. And this patient was just it was rough, man. Like, and I wasn't mean or anything, but I could tell like my mood was sort of getting affected. And I was like, okay, well, let me just quickly add these medications outside. Normally I'm gonna add the medications inside, but I was like, I need just like a quick little second to recompose myself. And I think when I was out there, I was like, okay, let me look through their story one more time, right? And it was like recently diagnosed with lung cancer. And I was like, if I was recently diagnosed with lung cancer, sure, I would like to think of myself as someone that could overcome that and just be nice. But I mean, right now, I don't need a, if I was in that situation, I wouldn't need someone to judge me for being upset. I want someone to be gracious and generous. And like, I guess as healthcare workers, we need to put ourselves to better standards. It's not what's right, it's being right. You know what I mean? Like, what's fair, it's you have to be fair. You know what I mean? Like, just because someone's mean to you doesn't mean you can reciprocate with meanness to them. I mean, you could, but you shouldn't. And I think that like layer of abstraction with patients and people happens when you decrease the resolution that you're like living life. Like when you're just zoned out, when you're like,
Yep.
this is a 8 to 5. This is not like me saving lives. And dude, phlebotomy, like I'm just gonna hazard a guess, okay? And you can tell me if this is true, but is it often like the big guys, like tough guys that are scared of needles?
I want to say it's pretty random. I
Hmm.
want to say, mm, okay, if I were to take like 10 random patients, I would say probably eight of them are like, no, six of them are like kind of like freaking out, like, oh man, do we really have to do this?
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Six of those are them. Then there's two that are like, all right, yeah, I guess let's do it. Like they have no problem with it. They're like, sure, go for it. And then the other two are kind of like just very bubbly,
Hmm.
which is rare because it sucks to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can have um people who you wouldn't think would be afraid of needles who are.
Is it harder for you to empathize with those people?
No, dude, because I hate getting like I mean it. I hate
Hmm.
getting poked. So I get it. And that part of the job is kind of rough because a lot of these people you have to wake them up in the middle of the night
Yeah.
and then it's like it's that on top of I have to poke you. And that usually doesn't make people very happy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't be happy if I was you, but
I so we can talk about this on another Patreon exclusive content episode, but I want to just keep this in your mind because I think this is a really loaded topic.
yeah,
But like just you having biases and like the importance of For me at least, I think it's really important to have a diverse healthcare because, dude, I'd like to think of myself as completely unbiased, right? When it comes to people. But even when I have like men that come in and they're like freaking out about like the most, like for me sometimes like just the way that I was grown up with and like raised by my
You're like,
parents,
man up.
dude, and I think that that's like a really scary thing is like I don't know, sometimes I look at certain demographics differently. Even if I don't want to, I just need to be like fully upfront and honest with myself. Like on my worst of days, I will start treating people differently, you know? Like if I see an elderly lady come in and she's like wearing her sweet little outfit and she's like all like scared and stuff, I'll be like, oh, okay, it's okay. Like let's just take the time. But if like a burly 30-year-old dude comes in and he's like, I am so scared of like I'll be like, I'm sorry, sir. Like I'll still treat them the same, but at the same time in my mind, something goes off. I think this is an important topic. I'm not just trying to out myself in front of all the people out here, but
I'll say one thing, and that's the only thing I'm going to say for right now. I think
yes.
humans are naturally biased, and I think there's like scientific studies that say that, and there's like basically nothing you could do about it.
Right. I think it's better if you don't just say you're not biased, but to say like I am biased and I have to just be more cognizant of it while I'm interacting with people. Cause I don't know, that's a scary thing, dude. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, I feel like that could be a whole
Yeah, that
topic.
we have plenty of podcast episodes to go over that. But okay, so going into like environment and stuff like that, I guess um dude, something happened today at work or at research because I'm volunteering at research right now in addition to clinic.
Mhm.
I was so upset, dude. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to get really comfortable in this research lab. I think
Mhm.
I'm like the type of person to like, try to run before walking. You know what
Oh,
I mean? Like just try to like get real good and really quick because that's just sort of like the way that I like tackling life. This procedure, 98% of it was really good. And then the very last step, I zoned out and I didn't know what type of buffer I used because basically we're centrifuging, right? And I don't know if I used the eluting buffer as the first step or if I used the actual buffer that I was supposed to. But eluting buffers strip the column of what you need. So I don't know if I just threw away all of the things that I was trying to make. And so like I'm gonna have to tell my doctor that I'm working with, like, oh, by the way, like think I did the right thing, but I don't know for sure. We'll proceed with the experiment. But dude, that made me think like I was just so upset with myself because I was like, how am I supposed to be a doctor if I'm gonna do this with the chemical reaction? Because you know what I mean? Like 90% of the operation went well. Just the last step, I nicked an artery. Like, it doesn't matter. Like that 90% doesn't mean jack.
bro. I I guess that's why they have that saying. Nobody's perfect. That's bro, because even the best they make mistakes.
Yeah,
And
but
but I understand that feeling. I hate that feeling. I had this feeling not that long ago, but what happened? Oh, I'm not gonna remember off the top of my head. I'll remember like tonight at midnight. But yeah, I had very similar something I did, and I just couldn't remember. I was like, did I do that or did I do this?
oh man.
Yeah, that's rough. Or I don't know, maybe just repetition. Maybe is that the first time you have to do that
It was my second
specific?
time, but I think it was because it was a repetition thing that I wasn't
You
thinking
got
because
too comfortable.
I just saw buffer and I was like, oh, and then like I looked and I was like, oh, there's a second bottle of buffer. did I grab the right one? Like
Yeah,
that's
because I
so
mean,
frustrating.
doctors aren't perfect either, but I feel like they see so many patients and just dealing with so many things over and over and over and over. They just get they get good at it. Not saying that they're perfect and they never make a mistake again. They're just certain things they get really good at.
Dude. Well,
It's rough.
regardless of that negative side, I wanted to ask you about like any fun things that happen with you in your life recently, because every exclusive episode, we're going to try to at least highlight one fun thing that's happened within our week prior. I think that's also just a good exercise to stay positive and grateful. Not that that's like a metric or important objectively, but I like being positive, I guess.
Yeah. So I have kind of a weird work schedule. I
Mm,
work 7 days straight. I work at night. So I work 7 nights straight and then I get 7 days off.
yeah.
And so these last 7 days are my 7 days off. Um, Tonight's my first night that I go in. So I've just had basically a lot of time to do stuff that I needed to do, basically like chores, that type of thing. Um, I I don't know if you can see that TV in the back.
Yeah.
Um, I've been trying to do this project for a long time, so I'm pretty happy that it's it's almost done. It's about to be done. I might be able to finish it here up in a little bit. Um, Basically that TV, we hung it up, and I have a bunch of cables like hooked up to it, but all the cables were like running down the wall. I don't want to show you because it's a mess. um, and I have a PlayStation hooked up to it. I have Apple TV. I
Oh
have
man.
a sound bar, and the sound bar, you know what a sound bar is, right? Like the
Yeah, yeah,
long
yeah.
speaker. I had it just like literally sticking up like this, standing on the ground because the cable wouldn't reach all the way up to the TV.
Oh, that's so jank.
Anyways, I have a friend who's an electrician. He came over and he helped me. There's an outlet that's on the ground basically. We
Hmm.
moved it up behind the TV. So there's an outlet right behind the TV.
Oh, nice.
And then my dad has been telling me that he has these really nice pieces of wood that he got from his work.
Hmm.
So we went over on Sunday. We had breakfast and we went over to his house and we created this shelf. So I'm
Mm.
gonna put a shelf right under that, and I'm gonna be able to put basically everything behind the TV on the wall, and that way it's like it looks like there's nothing there. So that's pretty neat. I had time to take Nala out. She's pretty exhausted right now. She's laying down and she's just out.
Nala's his dog, by the way.
Oh yeah,
It's not
she's.
just like a person.
I guess that could be a person's name.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was nice. This was
How long has this
uh,
project been?
like the shelf.
Just the whole TV setup. Because now,
I
like,
I set up that TV like a year ago.
geez, so it
The
must feel
I like
really good.
I mounted it on the wall like a year ago, and everything has just been hanging. And
Jeez.
I want to say not even that long ago, a few months ago, I was like, I want to put that outlet, but I also want the shelf, and I kind of wanted them to be done at similar times, just so I could just be done with it.
Mm,
And it was just kind of hard because my dad stayed in New Mexico with my grandpa.
mm.
He was over there for weeks, and I didn't want to mention the shelf thing to him just because he's going through it. Um, and my friend, he just the schedules wouldn't work out. Either I was busy or he was busy. And finally, out of nowhere on Friday, was it Friday? Yeah, my friend came over, did or Saturday came over, did the outlet. Sunday morning, my dad was like, "You want to do the shelf?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Dude,
And
perfect
now
storm, huh?
I went and I bought all like the brackets and stuff that you need to put into the studs to hang it. And I literally just didn't have the screws, got the screws today, And right now, I'm just waiting on my roommate basically to get home so I can use some of his tools.
Dude,
I'm hyped.
dude, that's so. It's nice to finally finish something, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I'm happy because it's that whole wall has just been ugly.
Dang.
It's just
And
been
you're
like
pretty
a,
clean, dude. Like you're pretty.
yeah,
I feel like you
it's,
don't like being unorganized and stuff.
yeah, no, it's been
Messy.
rough to look at. I feel
Jeez.
like it does not represent me the way I've had that wall. Um, yeah, I'm pretty excited. But that was pretty much, oh, I was gonna say one more thing.
Yeah.
Uh, at work, people have been sick just because it's that time of year.
Yeah.
So for the past few months, I want to say every time that I had like my days off, I was asked to come in to cover for people who are sick. And this was the first week that I wasn't asked to come in. So I had like my
Mm,
full days where I just like kind of did what I wanted to do. It's pretty cool.
dude. It's
How about
amazing
you?
how much you like enjoy breaks after you haven't had any. Cause like, oh man. Anyway, so for my little highlight of the week, dude, so the second day off of my training, and my training was terminated like 4 months early. So technically I was supposed to have 4 extra months of training, but I finished training really quick for my medical
Training.
assistant job.
Ah, okay.
And so the second day off of training, I ended up working with this like legend cardiologist in Colorado.
Can I ask what their name is?
Well, let me look her. Well, anyway, um,
Wait, don't answer that. Is it a boy or a girl?
boy.
Okay, never mind then.
I mean, I want to say boy, male.
Sorry,
Well, anyway, whatever.
gender.
So
Never mind, don't answer
anyway,
that.
anyway,
Don't assume their gender.
I'm not assuming. Anyway, the dude, he was the first person to place a stent in Colorado. So
Hmm.
he's like a legend. And I remember it was my second day off of training. We saw 35 patients that day.
Oh wow.
And I remember he was like, "Who trained you?" And I was like, "Oh man." And he was like, "This is not how you place an EKG. Let me put this on." And I was like, "Oh man." I was just getting destroyed that day. It was like one of the hardest days of work at the clinic. And I told myself I would never complain at this job, and I didn't. But that was one of those days where I was like, "Oh man, I feel so just brutalized." Because that was right off the heels of my med school rejection too. So like I was just really in the thick of it. And yesterday was the first time I worked with him um after that, day 2 of off of training. And he was just like a great job. Like you've grown a lot and like, you know what I mean? He didn't say any of that, but like he was just happy and making jokes with me and like he was saying like thanks for working with us. And there was so much. First of all, I felt great because that meant that I was doing good by the patients, right? Like,
Hmm.
but I can't just say that it was completely altruistic. There was that part of me that was like, just, you know, completely elated. I was like, I did it. Like, I was preparing myself for clinic the day before. I was reading over all the charts over and over and over again, just so I remembered every single patient and every single thing that the patient like had, all the relevant testings. I was like, I refuse to like be worse than I was on that day.
Hmm.
And dude, he he's such a cool dude. Like I'm not gonna lie, like my real reason for being a doctor obviously is to like help people and stuff. But there's a lot of helping factors, and one of them is just the fact that doctors are so cool, dude. Like he just walks in, he's 75 years old or something. And oh my gosh, dude, the amount of respect everyone has for this dude, and he's just like chilling. It's oh man, he's so cool and he's so sharp. Like you look at his eyes and like that brain's working at like 5,000 miles per hour right now. Like it's just, dude, it's so cool.
Nice. That's neat. I I know I've had a similar feeling, not with doctors, just with staff in general, and it
Yeah.
feels good. Because you probably felt like you were like, he doesn't need to be watching me. I can kind of do this, right? Or
Yeah.
like he doesn't have to worry that I'm going to do this
Yeah.
again. Yeah. And
I
you
think,
probably felt the same way. You were probably like, I got it.
yeah. And I think there's something so satisfying, like truly satisfying of just being good at what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like you're a phlebotomist, but like you're good at sticking in the needle, pulling it out, like whatever you need to do, you're just good at that. It's probably so satisfying. What are you
Stop,
laughing
you clown.
at?
Yeah, no.
Uh,
I yeah. I really do try to be good just because one, it's good for the patients, obviously.
yeah.
And two, staff that you work with is just happy with you. They don't have to struggle with you, if that's the right word. I feel like it's a little harsh, but
I agree. Like if you're not productive, you're a strain. And like
yeah.
that's just a
And
horrible feeling.
there's definitely times where patients are just they're hard to like. Some people are just really hard to find their veins.
Dude,
And I
yeah.
feel so bad because like the nurses are like, well, let's see if we can help you. And I really do feel bad, but sometimes they need certain tests done. And if I can't do it, I'm like, I can't find it. I'm like, and I do feel bad. And I really try not to be in that boat
Yeah.
because yeah, it's so it feels really good to be able to go in and kind of do what you need to do and be done and not have people waiting on you basically.
Dude, it does. But that comes from doing something for a while. And this is a
Well, yeah,
segue. Well, this is a segue to starting because we're talking about after we've started and we've been doing something for a while and getting better. But now let's talk about beginnings because this is where we're thematically touching upon episode 0 of the
yeah,
Asclepius podcast. So I think there's such a duality with beginning, right? Because like it's exciting, but it's also it can be traumatizing depending on how you're starting it, right? So I mean, I guess what's your take on the topic?
yeah. I want to talk about because I've only worked at this new position for like 4 months,
Mm,
and so I work the night shift and I'm by myself. I'm the only phlebotomist there at night at the lab, and it's kind of nerve-wracking at first when you're being trained because they really put that into your head. They're like, you have to be basically good and know what you're doing because you're alone. Everybody else is sleeping. You can't just call somebody during the day. There's a bunch of people there that you can just ask, or if you
mm,
can't find somebody's veins, there's other people you can be like, hey, I wasn't able to find veins on this patient. Can you guys go look? And to me, that was like, even to this, I feel like even now it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but luckily I've got to do it for a little while now where I'm a little bit more comfortable. And it's just beginnings are kind of overwhelming. When I first started, it was that on top of, I've never really dealt with like providers and tests that they want to look at. And I guess technically it's not my job to know why they're testing, but I'm just a curious person.
yeah.
So I don't ask the providers, I don't ask the nurses, I ask the techs who actually do the blood testing
Mm,
because they've been doing it for years, and I it's just so much information. I think that's what's daunting. The initial, it's like you're walking in and it's like a wall of water,
mm.
and it's like, can you navigate this? And at first it's like, oh, I don't know. But it's like exactly what you just said. It's you gotta just do it and do it and do it and do it. And for me, I didn't know if I feel like there's a lot of people like me. I ask a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and I to this day I ask questions, and I've been doing this for a few months now, and there's so much stuff that I do. Some stuff I forget. I'm not gonna lie, and I would much rather ask and get those like, dude, are you serious? I'd rather
Yeah.
ask and them tell me
Then you do
than,
something wrong to the
yeah,
patient.
exactly,
Jeez.
exactly. Not ask and then and or that or have I really try to keep poke people as the minimum that I can.
Yeah.
So I really try not to make mistakes and I have to poke them. One time I felt so bad. I wasn't paying attention. I was just in that routine and I was drawing specific set of tubes. And I go back to call it receiving the tubes and you have to like scan them and it has like the patient's information. And the computer is like, oh, you didn't scan this tube. And I'm like, what tube? And I look at the orders and they needed a different tube. And I was like,
Oh man.
luckily, this patient was extremely nice and understanding. I was like, I have to poke you one more time because I forgot to get this tube. I wasn't looking. And so I really try not to do that. Um, beginnings are daunting. I think starting is what's hard. Once you're in it, you just keep swimming, I guess. It's like getting in the water. I don't know if you've ever gotten in cold water,
Mm. But
like a
then,
lake.
yeah.
Once you're in, you're in. It's like, what, you're just gonna sit there? You're gonna swim.
I agree with that, but for me, I don't think beginning is hard.
Okay,
For me, like I love the fact that like I'm starting a new thing. Like it's sort of like a challenge that I want to overcome. Like that's like
sure.
sort of my mindset. What's hard is before you begin. I think that that's really hard for me because you know when we were applying to medical school or doing the MCATs or whatever, before applying, before studying for the MCATs, before starting, that was like the heaviest part of my thought processes, right? Because I was like, why am I starting? Because I know if I start, I'll go.
Mm,
Like it's sort of just like muscle memory. Like you just sort of grit through the pain. But why am I starting? Like, do I have a proper reason to go through this? And like, because you ask any sane person, aside from like finances, right? Because you're like, oh, just to pay the bills, you're gonna go through training for phlebotomy, and you'll have like a comfortable source of income. People will be like, fine for the money if they need the money. But if money was not involved, how many people of the population do you think will be like, okay, yeah, I'll just go through this, especially with medicine? There are sort of like very heavily friction saturated like pursuits. People are mean, people are real, people are cranky. Like you're going to see the best of people, but you're also going to see the worst of people, I feel like. And so like I don't know, this might be like sort of a heavier concept question, but like what do you feel like about before beginning? And whatever you want to take from that, you can, but
before
like
beginning.
thinking about beginning. Like let's say for instance, we just recently graduated. Not recently, but recently graduated.
2 years ago, three
Yeah,
years.
jeez, man. But when we did graduate, we had to start looking for jobs. We had to
Sure.
start going back into it. And for me, that was a very rough time for me because my immediate thought was, I'm continuing. I'm not starting anything. I'm continuing. Or at least maybe I am starting medical school, but that was my idea. And when I realized, oh, I'm not starting medical school, I'm going to be in this limbo transitory place. before starting medical school. I was like, oh my gosh, like it just it's rough. Like how do you go through that? Like because I know you've gone through it. I'm not saying that because I'm talking for Servando. I'm saying it because Servando and I have literally talked about this topic quite a few times. And so, I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like starting is more difficult than being in that transitory space, that transition?
Like, yeah. Mm, okay, I have like an example right now that we can use. Me retaking the MCAT.
Yeah.
Would you say I'm in that transitory space?
Oh, heck yeah. Because once you start
I,
taking, once you start studying for the MCATs, you're there. I feel like you're in the moment. Like it's rough, but it's not much of a mental battle. It's just like you're going through it.
so for me, like right now, it's just like non-existent. I don't struggle with it. It's there, but I
Mm,
don't struggle with it. But then the, I guess, I don't know what you would call it. The idea of starting is like hard.
that means you are
But
there
to
because you.
but but to me it's like if I use that analogy, to me it's like s- starting to study again for the MCAT to me is analogous to like jumping into the cold lake, which is equivalent of starting something.
Yeah.
No? It's like you're you're here. There's this line of like actually me like actually buying books and starting to read, starting to take practice questions and practice exams. And then there's like a whole process that starts at this line. To me, crossing this line is what's hard. Not
Well,
being on this side of the line, or really even being on this side of the line
so
mentally.
pre-starting is hard because I feel like once you start, it's fine, right? Because like for instance, for me,
I guess, yeah, pre
analogous
starting.
to the swimming, right? Like
I think we're talking about the same thing. We're just
I
wording
think
it
we are.
differently.
Yeah. Because for me personally, like if I saw a swimming pool, right, and I knew it
Sure.
was cold, my mind would probably default to why am I jumping in this pool right now and subjecting myself to this initial fright, like this initial cold. And if I know the reason why, as in, oh, it's because I'm gonna have fun and I'm gonna live my life and just work out a bit and like whatever the purpose may be, then that makes me be like, okay. And then I just jump in. And then when I'm in there, I'm like, I don't really care at that point. It's cold, but I already went through all of that battle in my mind before. It's
Well,
that thought process before, you know?
what if you already know why you're gonna jump in? It
Then
just
it's
still
easy.
seems daunting. Because I know why I have to study for the MCAT. I know why I have to retake it.
Yeah, I think it's the reason why I say it's pre is because you have to think of all of the possible, like all the potentials. Like for instance, when I'm applying to medical school again, right? And it's upcoming this May. The reason why I find it daunting is not because I don't know why I want to do it, but I'm trying to think of every single thing that could happen as a result of me starting, right? How cold is that water going to be for me, right? Like how many kids peed in that pool, whatever it may be. I need to really think about that. And that's the difficulty. It's not necessarily, I guess, knowing why, but it's more of like you're right, bracing yourself for that cold. You know it's going to be cold. You know what aspects are going to be nice and what aspects are going to be rough. For me, the thing is like, can I handle that brief period of just not hearing back from any medical school again and being in the exact same situation again? Because when I was waiting for those med schools to reply to me, it was one of the worst experiences of my life because everyone kept on saying, oh, you're going to get accepted into medical school. Oh, it's going to be like, oh. And then 5 months passed, and I'm like, I still haven't heard a single reply. And everyone keeps saying, like, it's obvious. And you know what I mean? Like, and given the fact that there is this precedent for failure now, the second time feels way more rough because, like, despite the fact that I feel like I've improved myself so much as a person, and I feel like that initial failure was really necessary for me to really understand what the purpose of medicine is and what the purpose of my life is. Dude, knowing that there is a potential, that there is a possibility of me having to apply a third time, and in addition to that, having to retake the MCATs with that application because my MCAT will expire around that time. After spending 2, 3 years of work building on my resume and gritting my teeth and, like pushing myself and growing as much as I can, after all of that, that water seems frigid cold. And I think, once I start applying, I'm gonna be like, whatever. It's just like I'm forced into the situation, so I don't have to make a choice. I'm just literally in it. But it's like that before period where I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, can I handle how cold this is gonna be? And I think the same thing is for you. And I don't know how much the context changes because for me, when I failed, I failed like closer to that starting point or like to starting medical school. And I don't know if that makes it more rough or less rough than for you, which you were like you were close, but you weren't as close as I was. And so I don't know if it's like the taste of victory was like closer for me, and therefore it was like it feels so much more gut wrenching. And even the fact that I got accepted into an interview, passed the interview, and then they just said that they didn't have enough spots that year. Like, if you think about how close I was probably like 200 people away, max, from starting medical school and being on my career. I don't know if that's more rough than what you went through, which I think was extremely rough. And looking back, I feel bad for it because not that like I feel obligated to be there for you, but because you're your own person and you can do with whatever you want to go through. But as a friend, I felt bad because I think there was a lack of empathy or relatability on my part with you because you took the MCATs
I
and
can't relate.
see a sucker. No, I'm joking. No, but when you took the MCATs, I didn't necessarily like. I was just like, oh, it's okay. Like, just do take it again, like everyone would say. But then as soon as I felt like, oh no, I have to redo my application too, I immediately felt like way more in tune to how you felt. I feel like where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what this bro was going through. You know,
It's tough.
I mean, do you think your experience was worse than mine or
Personally, no. I think I'd be a little bit more.
see that's hard. I think both of them are rough in their own way.
For me, and it's probably just extremely biased. I would have rather got rejected not at the MCAT, but at the actual application interview.
That makes sense.
Just because I'm like, well, the MCAT's done, my GPA's done. I could just try again.
I think that's where, because for me, I'm like, oh,
Oh, and
my
you're thinking the
MCAT's
same thing
done,
with
my
me.
GPA's done. I'm screwed. Like, how much
Uh,
more can I better my resume before applying again? You know what I mean? Like, and dude, I'd much rather try to bump up my GPA than try to get work experience. That's so difficult to apply to like 15 jobs, get one response back, and then realize that it wasn't compatible or something. That's so devastating. Anyway, so I guess the last thing that I wanted to sort of touch upon is that Servando and I, along with our friend Khaled, we are starting something with this project. And I guess I will go over the reason why I'm doing this project, and then you could go over the reason why you're doing the project. Um, and then Khaled, his viewpoint will not be shared because he's not here, and we're not going to speak for him. But I think analogous to what I was saying before, I think understanding the reason why you're doing something is so important because you don't want to live life without like being absent-minded, just like, oh, I guess I'll go through this and I guess I'll do this. Like you sort of just I feel like it's better if you figure out like, oh, yeah, this is the purpose, and this is why, or at least this is a close enough estimation to my purpose. This is why, right? Because like not to go into quantum mechanics and string theory, but it's like called the perturbation theory, where like you get an average, and even if you add like incremental steps, the average is or the estimate is pretty accurate. I think it's the same thing here. Like the reason why I started the podcast was because I wanted to first of all donate money to Children's Hospital because I volunteered at Children's Hospital and I realized that given the constraints of my resources, namely time, I wasn't able to volunteer at Children's Hospital anymore. But I wanted to still be a part of that because, you know, in general, I feel like children, it's rough seeing them in the hospital for me. Like it's really, really rough. And like I think that's the reason why I don't think I could go into pediatrics because I think my emotions get too involved there. But when you deal with these things, and I think healthcare as like something where you're afforded a lot of like gifts and blessings. You have to be healthy. You have to meet a minimum threshold of intelligence. On average, you have to be more rich, or at least you have to have more resources available to you to sustain this type of journey. The MCAT isn't cheap. It's $300. Studying for the MCATs isn't cheap. That's like another $1,000 or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things, and having access to really good mentors. Like, there's so many things that we take for granted to become doctors and physicians and healthcare workers. And so I feel like when I look at patients like Children's Hospital or the patients in Children's Hospital, these are people that weren't afforded those blessings. Like kids that didn't have the opportunity to have the life that I was able to have because they were just born with unfortunate circumstances or whatever. And I feel like it's it's natural for buildups of energy to distribute like entropically. It's like it just seems natural. Like you build up resources and then you distribute those resources. It feels good. I feel like that's why it feels weird when you see people who grotesquely hoard all their resources to themselves and keep hoarding it. Like it just feels unnatural. It feels gross. It feels like there's some sort of violation of law here. And the podcast was able to, first of all, donate money to Children's Hospital. But secondly, I think that I've had the great fortune of being able to talk to a lot of professors and brilliant minds. And I think it'd be waste if it just ended on me. And although I'd like my best or try my best to proliferate that to all the people I talk with, the podcast offers a better platform for me to share that with a lot of people. Like the words that Dr. Luger says, they're amazing words. But how many people get to hear them? Not that many. This podcast helps share that. Same thing with Servando's words. Same thing with my words. Whatever you get from our words, I'm not saying they're amazing, but it's a really cool thing to have this resource available to us, which is the internet. And I think it'd be a shame if we didn't use it to better help people. So that's why I decided to do this podcast. That's the reason why, despite the cold water, I decided to jump in and start this. And that is why, despite all the obstacles and steep learning curves that Servando and I are going to have to learn in order to make this a successful venture, I I wholeheartedly will pursue this because there's something deeper than money for me here. In fact, money is a residual. It's like a latent product. What's really important is, I think, the vision, I guess. And I think it's very consistent with my pursuit of medicine too. So, anyway, I think that's why I wanted to go over this beginnings thing. Servando, I've been meaning to ask you this because I sort of roped you into this whole process, but I never really understood why you joined. Well, it's not I didn't understand, but rather I never explicitly asked you why, and you've never explicitly told me why. I don't know if it's obligation out of friendship or whatever, but or just something to do. But I genuinely wanted to know why you decided to not only be a part of this podcast, even though you don't listen to podcasts, first of all, and second of all, that you're willing to start this merchandising thing with me because that means more money generated for Children's Hospital. So, why? What's your reasoning, I guess, for starting?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Engineers in Medicine, the club, where we got to do the Children's Hospital project and we got to build the cart. And like you said earlier, and I meant to ask you during the actual talk, sounds like you were on the same boat as me. Pediatrics are rough. I was talking about how sometimes you get in like the habit of just kind of going through patients and you're kind of just like just trying to finish your job. But never once have I felt like that with a pediatric patient. Man, that's rough. I always sympathize, and it's being part of that children's hospital. I felt pretty lucky because I, I hope it brought a lot of joy to, or some joy to a lot of children. And you asked me if I wanted to do this, where we could potentially get some money for that children's hospital. I just I feel like you touched on this when you're talking. It For me, it doesn't feel fair that I get to realistically, I have a great life. And I see these kids who, I mean, who am I to judge, but they've never done anything wrong in their life and they have to suffer. And so if there's even a small chance that this helps them, I'd, I'd be very lucky because that would make me feel very happy. I, yeah, I'm nobody to be judging anybody, but I feel like children specifically, I think it hurts me the most to see them sick and in pain because they haven't done it wrong in their life. And it just kind of isn't great to see them in pain. It just doesn't make sense. So um, that's my main reason. If we could help those kids by doing this, that would be really wonderful. And also, you told me that I guess some people listen to how me and you talk on these podcasts. I guess they like us. I guess they think we're funny or something. I don't know. Um, yeah, if it brings joy to them, or if we give any sort of value to people who are like struggling, it's pretty neat.
Dude, I think it is pretty neat. I mean, we have like 30 episodes of just you
Yeah.
and me talking. Jeez. I don't know what we're gonna do with that, but
I know to me it's just like me and you talking, but you said some people think we're funny, or I don't know exactly remember exactly what you said, or if they found value in it.
I
I
don't
don't
think they
know,
found
because
value in it, but I think they thought it was funny dynamic.
I want to touch on I do not listen to podcasts. I don't think I've ever listened to a podcast
You should.
like but I will say I watch YouTube videos, and for me, on my free time, I watch YouTube videos and they make me like happy. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why or what it is exactly,
Mm,
but it sounds like some people listen to podcasts and have the similar feeling how I feel when I watch YouTube videos. It's just like they relax, or it's like it's their me time. That's what they like to do.
yeah, and it's sort of like you're growing. I think that's the not to
Yeah,
generalize, but like podcast listeners tend to be more of the cerebral parts of the
yeah,
population, I
that's
feel like.
fair. They're giving actual information.
Yeah.
Not saying that YouTube can't give information,
Oh,
but
dude, I love YouTube. Like Veritasium. Have you ever, or like Mark
Mark
Rober,
Rober.
Smarter Every Day,
Oh, I like those guys too.
Vsauce. Hey,
There's
Michael
a there's
here.
a there's a lot of really cool YouTube channels, and I'm not gonna lie, I watch a lot of different stuff. I can watch that type of content where it's like just interesting and cool and kind of related to what I've done in my education. And I like cars. Um,
The
yeah, I
movie.
didn't know.
I'm joking.
So in general, why I decided to do this is just
Yeah.
one, to put it simply, mainly to help children at the children's hospital, and
Mm.
two, if people actually listen to this and we bring any sort of value or comfort. Um, yeah, that's basically why.
Well, here's to starting a new chapter. Thank you everyone for listening to the first episode of the Patreon exclusive content. Why do you look
You're welcome.
Oh man. Oh my goodness. Anyway, yeah, I hope you all are set up for this journey. We have a lot of things planned in store so that we can just make a bigger impact. And thank you for starting it with us. We're really excited. At least I am, and I'm gonna collectively speak for the team. So, thank you all and hope you enjoy.